Welcome everyone to Not That Media. My name is John and in today's video I continue my series of videos relating to the upcoming horror convention For the Love of Horror, which is taking place in October on the 19th and 20th in Manchester, UK. So come along with me as I very excitedly talk about the man himself, Tom Atkins. Before I jump in talking about Tom Atkins, I want to actually spend a moment talking about the circumstances that led to Tom Atkins joining For the Love of Horror this year. And it's somewhat of a sensitive subject. I always try to approach these things with a modicum of positivity, even though it's a negative discussion point, and that is guest cancellations. Now, I wanted to spend a minute talking about it because I do sometimes think that, particularly For the Love of Horror, I think that there is a lot of unnecessary negativity, frustration, toxicity thrown at Monopoly events and For the Love of Horror when a guest cancels. Now, for those of you who are not obviously aware or maybe relatively new to the con, these guests have to commit so far in advance that unfortunately sometimes there are inevitable circumstances, often due to filming commitments or movie commitments, that they have to withdraw from the con. It happens every year without fail, and yet for some reason people seem to react like it's the first time a guest has ever cancelled at any convention. I do think it's partly down to the fact that For the Love of Horror, as I've said in other videos, is really good at finding those really rare cult people. So I think there's a bit of an unfair perception that perhaps for some reason we should be personally affronted that For the Love of Horror has lost a guest. I have every single year had guest cancellations. It's always a disappointment, obviously, but I always look at it as an opportunity to actually look around the rest of the guest list. And in fact, for those of you who watch my Tucker and Dale vs. Evil video will learn that I had never seen that movie and had no intention of seeing it until there was a couple of guest cancellations. I got my money back and I decided, okay, who else is there? It's money that I'd already allocated to the con, so if I can reinvest it, why not? And that led me to find the fantastic Dale and Tucker vs. Evil. Absolutely love it. Okay, one of those guests has cancelled, and I'm fully aware of how ironic it was that I put a video out and then suddenly one of them cancelled. I laughed, to be honest. I wasn't angry, I wasn't affronted. I actually laughed because you can't write it, you know. I go to the trouble of making a video, put it out there, talk about how happy I am to meeting Alan Tudyk, and he cancels, of course. But again, you know, I do understand that people have a right to be frustrated, they have a right to be disappointed. A little bit of friendly fan advice from myself, and I know it's something that certainly, I believe it has been said on the For the Love of Horror live shows a few times over the years, is one of the things, if you are new to the convention circuit, or you are travelling a really long distance, or you are investing a significant amount of money, don't put your eggs in one guest basket. If you are coming from hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away even, if you are flying, training, whatever you're doing to get here, you're putting yourself up in an expensive hotel and you're going to meet that one guest, you have to understand that there is that possibility that that guest might cancel. But For the Love of Horror is such a fantastic convention. The cosplays, the Q&As, the atmosphere, the merchandise, the food, everything. It's such a cool event that if you are committed to attending and your main guest has cancelled, don't worry about it, still go. There are 30 other guests at this point in time. There are actually 32 guests now in attendance as a result of Tom Atkins being put on the list. There are 32 people. So if you have one guest cancel and you think it's like, oh, that's the end of that then, it's not. Have a look round, see what else there is. If it's a film you've never seen before, why not give it a chance? In the For the Love of Horror live episode a couple of weeks ago, Neil and Ben both talked about one of their favourite things is meeting people who have not seen certain films, and they talk about how For the Love of Horror actually turned them on to those movies, and they've become fans and met guests and gone on to meet people as a result of sharing a love of horror. So have a look round. I mean, personally, I think it's an amazing list this year, and I have gone, this year certainly has been a year where I am meeting a significant number of people who I had never seen in a film before. Linnea Quigley, Amelia Kincaid, as I say, the Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, those two, sadly I can't remember their full names, Tyler and Katrina, never heard of them before, but I can't wait to meet them and talk to them and talk about how I'm not a fan who has been around for decades. In fact, in previous years when this has happened, Fright Night, Night, for example. There were some cancellations, half a dozen cancellations, so I thought I'd meet the Fright Night people. Those guests were really appreciative to meet me, as arrogant as that sounds, a fan who sat there and stood there and they said, so how long have you been watching Fright Night? And I was kind of like, 6 weeks? And they couldn't believe it. They loved it. They loved the fact that I had gone to the trouble of finding a film from 1986 and they really wanted to know, does it hold up? What did you think? How did you find it? Where does it come from? So don't always be quick to discount the fact that because your primary guest has cancelled, it's the end of the world. It really isn't. Yes, it is disappointing, but please do look around. And if and when guests cancel, just remember, For the Love of Horror are just as disappointed as you. They are just as unhappy because ultimately these guys are booking these people because they want to meet them just as much as you. So anyway, having had a few cancellations, obviously naturally there was some disappointment, and For the Love of Horror was working hard. They admitted that because a couple of the guests were quite high profile, it was really important to replace them with at least one, if not more. And at the time of recording, as far as I'm aware, Tom Atkins is the final member of the lineup, but never say never. I don't have any insider knowledge, I'm not on the inner circle or anything like that, but from what the guys have been saying over the shows for the last few weeks and on the social medias, the lineup is pretty much set now, as long as there isn't an opportunity to add somebody at the 11th hour who is too good to miss. It can happen, you never know. But I'm going to run on the assumption now that Tom Atkins is the final guest. Now, this is a big one. If you are not aware of who Tom Atkins is, I strongly recommend that all the films I'm going to recommend, some of them I'm just going to skirt over very quickly, and a couple I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail. I strongly recommend all these films because Tom Atkins is just a cool guy. He is a great actor. He is a cult actor. He deserves the recognition that he gets. He deserves the level of excitement he gets when he was announced. People were figuring it out at 5 o'clock. Yesterday at the time of recording, when the clue went out, a picture of Ray Wise and Cameron Diaz, and a very smart person quickly worked out Ray Cameron, Tom Atkins' character from the film Night of the Creeps. As soon as someone figured that out, the social media went mental, and it was fantastic to see. Having seen quite a lot of negativity about cancellations, they're all dropping like flies now and all this kind of stuff, it was really cool to see a level of real excitement, really getting it pumped up and just waiting. It was like the longest 2 hours for a horror fan, just waiting for them to drop on social media that yes, Tom Atkins is returning to For the Love of Horror. Now, he is returning in that he did attend in 2021, and I personally did attend the 2021 convention, but sadly couldn't afford to meet him. So I always talk about, when I talked about For the Love of Horror, is there one guest that you didn't meet that you're really disappointed and things like that? Tom Atkins is always the man. And what I would say for those of you who have the FOMO like me is never take for granted a guest who attends this convention. Just because they are here this year does not mean they will be here next year. So if you want to meet them, you've got to meet them now, is what I would say. I'm going to fly through 9 films that starred Tom Atkins. Well, 8 films and 1 TV appearance that I wanted to highlight. And all of these I strongly recommend. If you know them all, hopefully there'll be no surprises here. But if you're new to horror and you've got a couple of weeks, or new to For the Love of Horror, and you've got a couple of weeks to do some research and you're on the fence, I strongly recommend all of these films. Most of them he is a main character, or he is the main character. Some of them are secondary, and there's one where it's more a cameo than anything, but his impact to the film is well known. So let's start all the way back at the beginning, for me anyway, which is 1980s classic John Carpenter's The Fog. Tom Atkins plays the rather aptly named Nick Castle and stars opposite Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh, Adrienne Barbeau, a fantastic cast, and they are all in a town with a secret, a town with a dark past, built on lies, theft and murder, and the mistakes of the past begin to come back to this town as ghosts in the fog begin to appear, making demands, saying that people will die, and it's up to Tom Atkins, Jamie Lee Curtis, etc. to solve the mystery, save the day, and basically not die. It's a great film. It's one of those films where I think people kind of forget about the fog, and I think certainly some people don't even recognise the fact that it is Tom Atkins in the movie, because he doesn't have his trademark mustache, as silly as that sounds. First time I saw it, I didn't realise it was actually Tom Atkins. That shows how much of a fan I was when I started watching John Carpenter films, but I became a fan. I strongly recommend The Fog. It is a classic. It is a somewhat underrated horror film in the John Carpenter oeuvre because it is somewhat hidden behind the shadow of Halloween. It was the next film after Halloween in terms of horror, and whilst it does have its cult status, it is very much in the shadow of that movie, but strong recommend. Continuing in the world of John Carpenter, 1981's Escape from New York, Tom Atkins appears in a smaller role of Captain, I believe it's Rem. It's a very small role. It's almost a blink and miss it moment, but it's a fantastic film where a city in the future, in the distant future of I think the mid-90s, a city has been walled off. New York is walled off, similar to Arkham City if you're a fan of the Arkham games. All the criminals, murderers, etc. are all left basically as fodder in this town, and they all have to deal with themselves. But when Donald Pleasance as president is shot down into New York, it's up to Snake Plissken, you heard, Kurt Russell, to be sent in, very much in kind of a Suicide Squad kind of setup. He has a bomb device around his neck, and he's got several hours to get into the town with Tom Atkins playing almost a kind of he's not a narrator, but he's in the ear of Snake Plissken. He's telling him what to do. He's giving him updates. He's the one who effectively sends Snake into the town. It's a great film. It's not really horror, I would say. It's more kind of pseudo sci-fi apocalypse. It's got Adrienne Barbeau in it again. Yet another ongoing relationship that Tom Atkins has with being in films with Adrienne Barbeau. It's a strong recommend. Really enjoy it. If you've never seen it before, it's a real good time. It's proper 80s. It's proper Carpenter in terms of soundtrack. It looks a little bit out of date, but I think the charm of the movie is still strong, and it's just cool to see Tom Atkins. Now, 1982 was a great year for Tom Atkins fans. He was in 2 feature films. One he featured less prominently, and another he was the main character. First, one of my all-time favourite films, 1982's Creepshow. The union of Stephen King and George Romero's love of EC Comics led to the creation of Creepshow. In my opinion, one of the greatest, not only horror-style films, horror comedy films, but also a fantastic comic book movie. Long before the DCU, the MCU, etc, etc, Creepshow was there in the early 90s, flying the flag of anthology comic book style horror. This film is unparalleled when it comes to comic book movies as far as I'm concerned. You are watching a living comic book. The way they're acting, the colours, the effects, the sounds, it's just a comic book come to life. Now, as an anthology story, there are 5 main segments in Creepshow. You've got Father's Day, The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrill, Something to Tide You Over, The Crate, and they're creeping up on you. Now, those 5 stories are contained within the comic book of Creepshow, which we see, but the wraparound section, so technically the 6th story, maybe 5.5 really, because it's only a few minutes, involves Tom Atkins and Joe King, the son of Stephen King. Now, in order obviously to enter the comic book, we need to be introduced to the universe, and we are introduced on Halloween, where Tom Atkins' character of Stan is verbally and sadly physically disciplining his son because he is reading all this horror crap, as he says. Where do you get this crap? When Joe King kicks back and says, well, they're not any different than the magazines under your bed, unfortunately Tom Atkins gives him a good slap across the face and sends him up to bed. This is where the film begins and gets into its title sequence with Raoul the creep outside the window. But before that all kicks off and we go into the comic book, we have a fantastic little scene with Tom Atkins and his on-screen wife, where his wife is saying, you didn't have to do that, you didn't have to be that horrible. And he talks about, you see that stuff, people coming out of the ground, killing people, monsters coming out of crates, that's why gods make fathers, basically, to stop this kind of stuff, which is one of my all-time favourite lines that Tom Atkins said, that's why God made fathers. Now, I don't want to spoil the ending because it's safe to say that Joe King does get his revenge on his father. It's a fantastic little ending. So if you're a Tom Atkins fan, don't expect too much. He's not in it a whole hell of a lot. But one of the things that I do find funny, a little bit of behind the scenes knowledge for you, is that apparently when Tom Atkins was approached to play Stan in Creepshow, he was actually really hoping to play Geordie Verrill, and George Romero had to say, I'm really sorry, Tom, but Stephen King has taken that part. So Tom Atkins actually wanted to play a different part in that film, and I think it's a shame he didn't do it, but I think he sets such a tone. You can smell the alcohol on that guy's breath. You just know he is one of the nastiest fathers in the world. You just just know that there's no paternal instincts between Tom Atkins and Joe King's characters, and he just plays it really well. He sets a fantastic tone that, okay, this is a guy who deserves something to happen, so when the creep appears outside the window and there's laughter and let's get moving and the film starts, you just know that something's coming. Because one of the things, like Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, etc., Creepshow is all about bad things happening to people who deserve it. So really strong recommend. 1982 also saw the release of another fantastic yet somewhat controversial movie, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. John Carpenter, Tommy Lee Wallace, Deborah Hill wanted to move the franchise away from Michael Myers. Michael Myers was dead, done, burnt, gone. He ain't coming back, apparently. Tom Atkins has the unenviable task of having to headline a Halloween movie without Michael Myers, and he plays Dr. Dan Chalice. Now, for the purposes of this video, I am going to read to you word for word the paragraph that is the synopsis, which is listed on the Wikipedia page, because I find it fantastic that when I try to explain this film for people, it's just lunacy, and sometimes people think I have made it up. So get ready. Bearing in mind Halloween 1 and 2 featured a story about a babysitter murderer stalking a babysitter who turned out to be his sister, and then followed her to the hospital with the intention of killing her, and her doctor tracks him down trying to stop it. That's Halloween 1 and 2 in a nutshell. Nice and simple, nice and easy. Hospital emergency room worker Dr. Daniel Dan Chalice, Tom Atkins, and Ellie Grimbridge, the daughter of a murder victim, uncover a terrible plot by a small-town mask maker, Connell Cochran, a madman who's planning a Halloween mass murderer utilising an ancient Celtic ritual. The ritual involves a boulder stolen from Stonehenge, the use of a silver shamrock mask, and triggering devices contained in a television commercial, all designed to kill millions of children on Halloween. That is a real film, and you know what? It's great. It's fantastic. It's perfect. But it is such a departure from Halloween. I think, unfortunately, a lot of fans, and I'm never a big fan of those people who say, well, you're not a true fan if you like Halloween 3. Only true fans don't like Halloween 3. There's no such thing as a true fan, and in my opinion, if you're referring to yourself as a true fan, you ain't a fan. You're just a troll. Sorry. Halloween 3 is so different, it's so off the boil, but it is scary, it is tense, it does have scenes of terror, it does have a couple of fantastic jump scares, it's got some of the nastiest kills in it, it has a child death in it, it has a really suspenseful scene where Tom Atkins with one of these killer masks is left tied up in a room and he has to try and escape it. It is a film that has a balmy subject matter, and yet everyone on board is treating it with the seriousness that it absolutely deserves, and Tom Atkins is fantastic in it. And the ending of that movie, don't want to spoil it, but the ending of that movie is one of the most iconic horror images. Whenever you see any montage of horror films, that moment of Tom Atkins with the phone in his hand is always used. So I find it really fascinating that on one level, people recognise Halloween 3 as the ugly stepchild of Halloween, the franchise, and yet in the cult status and over time it's been regarded really highly, that it gets recognised all the time. Now, if Halloween 3 didn't have the name Halloween 3 on it, Season of the Witch, it probably would have been much more successful, but unfortunately, because fans expected Michael Myers, Season of the Witch did not perform as well as it should be, which ultimately led to the return of Michael Myers 6 years later. But Tom Atkins still talks really proudly of that film. I think he should quite rightly do so. I think it's a great movie. It has led to one of my favourite interviews with Tom Atkins, where somebody, mild spoilers, you might want to skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to know any of this, but when asked about the fact that his love interest in the movie is replaced by a robot, does this mean that she was a robot in the whole movie, or was it just at the end? And as a result of that, does this mean Tom Atkins had sex with a robot in Halloween 3? To which a rather tongue-in-cheek laughing Tom Atkins just goes, I didn't have sex with no robots. And it's just one of my favourite out-of-character, just normal Tom Atkins moments. So if you haven't seen that, if you're a fan, seek out that bit of footage. I'm sure it's on YouTube, because honestly, he is such a legend, and the fact that he will fly the flag of Halloween 3 in all the adversity, all the negativity, just shows that this is a man who is proud of his craft, and rightly so. 1986, the year I was born, wonderful things happened, not obviously just me being born. Tom Atkins featured featured in a fantastic film as the character of Ray Cameron in 1986, Night of the Creeps. Night of the Creeps is a fantastic time. It is such a great movie. It is a cult movie. It's slightly pseudo sci-fi. It's a little bit goofy in places, but Tom Atkins, he's got a cigarette in mouth, he's got a drink in one hand, he's got a shotgun in another, he's a down and out detective. A running theme of detectives, it has to be said. He is awesome, and one of my all-time favourite taglines for a movie is what Tom Atkins said. It's in the trailer, it's on the poster, it's everywhere, which is when this is all kicking off, and I will give you a synopsis in a moment. He's moving the window and he's with a bunch of fraternity girls, and he turns and he says, "Ladies, your dates are here, but they're all dead." It's just such a great line, and the way he delivers it, the cigarette is in the air, he's got a slight smile to him, he's taking it seriously, but you can just tell that he loved to say that line. Now, Night of the Creeps, let me give you the synopsis. I am going to read it again just to make things nice and quick. In the film, a college student and his best friend steal a cadaver from a cryogenics lab as part of an initiation rite at a local fraternity. The corpse is an undead body from the late 1950s and is under the control of an extraterrestrial organism. Soon, several other people are infected with these alien slugs and effectively go loose on the town, loose on the fraternity. Tom Atkins plays the detective who is responsible for investigating some of the murders that are taking place. He is a haunted cop with a secret, which we do learn as we go through the film. He's an alcoholic, he's a chain smoker. He is quite happy to load up the shotgun and just go to town. This is a great film. Whilst he is not arguably one of the main characters, it focuses mainly on a couple, a fraternity couple, a boy and girl who are getting together for the first time. He is fantastic. I don't want to say he's chewing the sets because that's often a negative statement, but every scene he's in, he's fantastic. He's fully aware of the movie he's in, he's fully aware of the character he's supposed to be playing, and he plays it to the nines. This is such a fun time. It should be on everybody's annual watch list at the very least. I cannot wait to talk to Tom Atkins about this movie. This is a great film. Night of the Creeps, recommend. Now, just speeding it up a little bit now, the other three recommendations I'm going to give you, although I'm not going to go into any detail about them, is 1988's Maniac Cop, in which Tom Atkins appears as Detective Frank McRae, 1990's Two Evil Eyes, a return to George Romero's universe as Detective Grogan. He also continued to appear in George Romero movies such as Bruiser in 2000 in the role of Detective McClary, and a really nice big surprise for Creepshow fans, which I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about now, is that obviously Creepshow 1 and Creepshow 2 were 80s and early 90s movies that came out and kind of came and went. And very sadly, although Romero did move on to Tales from the Dark Side and that did get a movie, Romero sadly never got to get his toe back into the Creepshow universe. A good number of years ago, I think 2007 actually I want to say, I was really fortunate to meet George Romero, and I remember speaking to him at the time, and he did show his disappointment that Creepshow had never really gotten off the ground again, or never really got the life it deserved. Okay, there was the infamous Creepshow 3, which we don't talk about, but he always aired disappointment that Creepshow never came back or never got a rebrand. So, years after, of course, he passed away, it was wonderful that Greg Nicotero and Shudder picked up the mantle of Creepshow and brought it back to life, and what a life it's been having. Not as a movie, but as a TV show, an anthology TV show, and it's really wonderful. Just to give another reference to it, episode 1 featured the return to Creepshow of Adrienne Barbeau, who is another character, another actress who appeared in Creepshow. So it was really great. In season 4, which came out in 2023, so last year at the time of recording, long anticipated, long hoped, long wanted, but never really spoken about, because Creepshow has a fantastic kind of very small filming process, so not a lot of stuff gets out, not a lot of spoilers get out, but when they announced the Creepshow season 4 trailer, right at the end, the impossible happened, and there was Tom Atkins. He was smiling and talking to a character, so Tom Atkins was making his big return to Creepshow, and boy did he not disappoint. I'm not going to talk about the episode because I want people to go and watch it, because it's one of the best, it's great. Season 4, Creepshow, Something Borrowed, Something Blue is the name of the story. I can't remember which episode it is, and he plays the character of Frank, and he is front and center. He is a main character driving the story. He's a character with a secret. He's great in it. It's just wonderful to see. And again, a guy in his 80s, he is so full of life, so full of energy, so full of like love for Creepshow. It was such a perfect little full stop on that season to have Tom Atkins return all these years later and feature in a Creepshow that was a full story. Not just the wraparound sections, there's nothing wrong with those wraparound sections, but you only get maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes of Tom Atkins in that original Creepshow movie. So it was wonderful to come back and have a full segment dedicated to him, and he got to play an awesome character. All of this, strong recommend. One thing that I do want to just put a little bit of a spotlight on, outside of his filmography, is I really recommend, if you are a fan of behind the scenes and just general seeing actors just being themselves, there is a fantastic series of YouTube videos done by one of my other favourite people who I was lucky enough to meet last year, Sean Clark, who has become an icon within the horror community in his own right. Sean runs a YouTube channel, and although it originally started as television, DVD extras, etc., he has moved his Horror's Hallowed Grounds onto YouTube. And the Creepshow episode of Horror's Hallowed Grounds is available on there, in which Sean Clark and Tom Atkins go on a walking tour of the old sets, of the old places that they filmed, and share stories. Now, Tom Atkins, if you want to personify him just as a all-round good guy, somebody who you definitely want to meet, I think that video encapsulates it. He's funny, he's witty, he's jumping around, making comments and characters, doing all these kind of fun things. There's a real great scene where I think Sean asks him about his legacy in horror, and Tom Atkins has a fantastic little rant about how he believes he would have been a great King Lear, but instead he's doing all this horror crap, and just throws the Creepshow comic, I think, on the floor. I haven't watched it for a little while, but it's always in my mind rent-free, just watching that kind of stuff. Him and Sean Clark reenact the beginning of Creepshow. It's a real good time. It's about a 15-minute video. I do recommend you go and give that a look. So I think that's going to do it for this video. It wasn't supposed to be a long one. Obviously, we're less than a month from the con now. I think about 3 weeks at the time of recording, and Tom Atkins was not on my list of people to talk about, so I wanted to get a video out, because how could I not? This is a real coup for the love of horror, a return of another cult legend. He was absolutely iconic in the 2021 con. Everybody who talks about it on the social media channels talks about how great he is, how engaging he is, how funny he is. I was really disappointed that I couldn't meet him, so I'm so happy to be able to wrong that right this year. Cannot wait. He has multiple photo shoots available, photo by himself, photo with Adrian Barbeau, photo with Tommy Lee Wallace and the cast of Halloween 3, so plenty of opportunity. Because his career spans so many different franchises, he's going to be a busy man on that day. He's cash on the day as well, if you haven't already noticed, so if you're budgeting and you want to meet him, make sure you get that little bit extra in. I cannot wait. I thought Lynn Shay, Bill Moseley, Linnea Quigley, you couldn't get higher than these people. These cult or popular status people couldn't get any better, but Tom Atkins, wow, cannot wait. So with that being said, until next time, stay scared.
Your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.